Hi, and welcome to Manti's Book Club. Today we continue reading through Profession Witch. If you are watching this on Twitch, you can find previous episodes on my YouTube channel, acidmanticore. And the record of this episode will be uploaded to my YouTube channel tomorrow or day after or somewhere within a week. So if this is the first stream that you see, you can safely pause it and go listen to the beginning of the book. Because this is going to be the last episode actually. If nothing bad happens, today we are finishing this book. And let me a little bit quieter. Yes, okay. And hope that music is not louder than my voice. And let's begin reading. Today we start with the Lecture 16, Geology. Volga, wake up. Oh god, it's morning already? No, it's getting dark. Get up. No, wait. My head is pounding. Wash your face with cold water and drink some brine. How are you feeling? I turned on my side, facing Leon, who was sitting on the edge of the bench and lacing up his boots. Tolerable, the vampire answered laconically. Does your chest hurt? No. Leon, yes. What yes? Yes, it was I who killed the cow. For what? I've lost too much blood to fully regenerate in such a short time, and time is against us. I had to borrow someone else's flesh. What, you could borrow from me? I shuddered, remembering how Val didn't want to leave us alone. I control myself much better than this troll thinks, but my advice for the future is to never approach a wounded vampire. There were slip-ups. I'll take it into account. What is this howl? Sitting up and throwing off the blanket, I stretched sweetly. Someone died? A visiting goslar gives a concert in a vacant lot. Frankly speaking, his repertoire is dramatic. Dramatic? The troll barked, appearing at the door. The creativity of the goslar carried to the masses burst into the upper room with an eerie cacophony of screams, groans, and strumming of strings. Apparently the midwife didn't just drop him upside down, but slammed his head against the wall with a flourish. The baby's voice was too disgusting. Does such an extraordinary talent really have fans? I went to the window. The thin twilight mixed with the fog blurred the outlines of houses and leafless trees. The torches in the windows of the neighboring huts flickered dimly. A fire, laid out on an underdeveloped patch of land near a stone bell tower, was smoldering mercilessly. 7 or 8 locals with glazed eyes listened to the chilling ballad about Tsarevich Shivan and Zdychlik the Undying. The false tune evoked a lively response in the hearts of hangover-stricken residents. Ay, they killed Vanya, they killed them. The goslar howled in different ways, tormenting the instrument with his gnarled fingers. Not content with a simple statement of fact, the goslar, in a trembling falsetto, began a tale of torture to which the damned ghoul doomed the unfortunate prince in revenge for the obviously unsuccessful attempt on his Zdychlik's immortal body. 5 verses were devoted to a detailed description of pincers, forceps, and hooks. This song should have been sung not to children but to criminals in correctional institutions, so that hardened bandits would cry, repent, and bang their heads on the floor. Siobhan's last hours were terrible. They had no rhyme or melody. The agony of the prince mixed with the agony of strings. Guslar fell silent, and I realized that Shivanya would not resurrect. A child burst into tears in the woman's arms, and the shaggy mongrel eagerly echoed him. The kind Uncle Guslar stroked the foolish youth on his fair-haired head and promised to sing something else, equally touching and moralizing. The regular executioner, who was present among the spectators, spat and left, finally declaring that now he would not be able to sleep for a long time. Guslar took the professional statement as a compliment and inspiredly walked his hands along the strings. One more life-affirming song about death, and he's a corpse, Val muttered gloomily. And the favorite of the muses did not disappoint. I have never heard a more cheerful song in my life. The lamentations of the mourners of the open coffin were no match for it. In the middle of the verse, the troll jumped up and rushed into the light of the fire with a furious cry. Not even 5 seconds had passed before we heard a piercing scream and the tinkling of a lute being broken on the head of the ill-fated bard. The listeners burst into thunderous applause. Enough, get ready. Val, breathing heavily, went to the window and extended his hand for the bag line on the table. Time to go. The concentrated attention with which 2 grown men inspected a fresh molehill as tall as a good boar filled me with emotion. They tested the earth for taste, for crumbliness, for moisture, and finally came to the consensus that the passage was operational and most likely would open after dark. This was not the main entrance to Moldudir, or even not a service one. By analogy with the surface city, a hole in the fortress wall, securely covered with bushes and entwined with ivy, which only robbers and smugglers know about. Exactly what we need, Leon said authoritatively. Still, I don't understand why you immediately rejected the idea of an official visit, I said, chillily stamping my feet in place. You are not some bandit on the international wanted list, but the Lord of the Gava, whose lawful property was stolen and who has the right to demand the extradition of the robber. How are we going to look for that kid Waldock in an underground city of many thousands? We're looking for a stone, not a thief, the vampire explained calmly. And if the thief is not eager to meet me, then I can hear... And if the thief is not eager to meet me, then the call of the stone I can hear even from here. Don't worry, we'll go like following a thread. As for the official visit, something tells me it's not worth notifying the Waldocks about our arrival. If the sword was stolen at the behest of the new leader, they still won't give it to me. If it was stolen without his knowledge, even more so. Why did the Waldock even need your family relic? Who needs it besides you? I think about this all the time, Leon admitted with obvious concern. No one. Stone like stone is an artifact that has no value because it becomes such only in the hands of the Lord of the Gala. What's there to guess now? The troll waved his hand dismissively. We won't go back anyway. Of course not. But somehow I don't really want to move forward, I said. It no longer smells like theft. Necromancy. And why did I need a girl? Unless... Oh, learn! What did I remember? Quiet, Leon interrupted me. Look. The molehill began to stir. Fresh soil crawled from the top in a red wave, and the creature jumped out of the hole with the grace of a ferret. It shook itself, sneezed, and stared at us expectantly, not at all surprised. The only clothes the Waldock wore were a leather vest and a greasy bandage on his low forehead, holding back his long hair braided into small braids. The body was covered with short black fur. The Waldock stood like a rat on its hind legs, on half bent the Waldock stood like a rat on half-bent hind legs with narrow, beastily elongated feet. The front legs were muscular, with long fingers and hairless palms, more like humans. The muzzle resembled a dog's, a short fanged snout, pointed ears upright, black beady eyes. A bag stuffed to the brim hung from two straps behind his back. "Look," the bulldog barked abruptly. "They've already come here. And where are others?" "Who?" I asked in surprise. "From Anisov and Panka, their seller." Bulldog showed signs of concern for the first time. "Aren't you from their group?" "Not merchants?" Merchants, Val hastened to assure him. "Fine. What are you interested in?" Waldeck sat down comfortably on the molehill and crossed his hind legs. "Skins," Val grinned. "Black and brown." "You have a good one, my friend." Waldeck squealed and giggled. "Jokers, that means. Well, today I have almost no diamonds, only technical ones. I sell them by weight. Can offer karat rubies. They're good. They'll be good for earrings or to hang on a brooch on a bezel. Emeralds available. 27 carats, but with a defect. A crack on the side. Just right for a pendant." "And turquoise?" Leon asked. Whichever you want." I grabbed half a bag. "At least you can even pave the bridge. There is almost no demand for it this year. I will sell it cheap. Will you watch?" "Show me," the vampire shrugged. As soon as the Waldock turned away to throw out the shoulder strap, the hilt of a sword fell forcefully on the back of his head. The lifeless body was dragged under the nearest bush and covered with armfuls of thistles. To be sure, I cast a stupefying spell over them like a merchant for 6 hours. The passage was a bit narrow. Val, who volunteered to climb first, had to strip down to his pants. Just in case, the troll tied a thin but strong rope to his leg and handed the bowl to me. "Here, chick. Catch the imps with a live bait." He joked gloomily and climbed into the hole head first. The rope unraveled in jerks. Sometimes there would be languid pauses in its sliding through my fingers. Then it would come to life again, turning the ball. I was left with an angular skein in my hands when the rope stopped for the last time, and then shuddered 3 times. I got down on all fours and looked into the hole. "It's all right," I heard it barely audibly. "Chick, tie my clothes as a sword to the rope." The tight things, as if alive, dived and disappeared into the hole. "Now you go," Leon anticipated my question. "Okay." I didn't undress or leave my weapon. If I were to put on a chainmail coat and a winter sheepskin coat over it, I probably wouldn't be able to match Val's shoulder span. The hole was cramped, dark and damp, almost vertical, so you had to brace yourself with your elbows and knees to avoid flying through it like a stone thrown into a well. Having safely descended, I found myself in a round cave with earthen walls. Apparently, it served a housing for a dealer. There was a bowl with gnawed bones right on the floor and a pile of musty rags. The entrance to the hall was disguised with a dirty, fringed rag in which it was difficult to discern a tapestry with swans. The door, locked from the inside, was propped up with a knotted stick for security. Our shaggy merchant was clearly engaged in illegal work, concealing part of the mined stones for his own profit. I cautiously straightened up to my full height. The ceiling turned out to be unexpectedly high, tall enough for a troll. Instead of beams, it was straightened by some often intertwined roots with knobby thickenings from which there was a noticeable whiff of fresh air. Val, already dressed and fully armed, inspected the cave with the help of a found and lit torch. Lon climbed out of the hole. Hastily shaking himself off, the vampire crept up to the door on tiptoe and carefully pulled away the tongue of the secret peephole with his finger. "Guards!" he whispered with annoyance. "Two are at the very doors." Plain Braxa, two around the bend, and so on every 50 elbows. Armed to the teeth in chainmail, torches are burning along both walls. It looks like Moldudir is under martial law right now. Why? "They're waiting for us," the troll joked gloomily. "Look what an army they have assembled. Apparently they are terribly afraid." No, the vampire listened intently to the stranger's thoughts. "They're not afraid, as if they are anticipating something. I can't say more precisely. These creatures have too primitive thinking." "Do they see well in the dark?" Chick could put out a couple of torches, like at the tavern. Remember, Chick? Your gang then quietly pulled out a keg of beer through the window, while the owner was running after Tinder and his maid was screaming in a bad voice when someone reached under her skirt in the dark. And why did she squeal? I only felt a little. "No one can see in absolute darkness, including us." The vampire shook his head. "I can make us invisible," I suggested. "It will be easier to get past the guards." "You're making a point," Val approved. "Get started." I sighed and closed my eyes. The guys looked at each other expectantly. "Volha," Alon said after a long, surprised pause, "isn't it difficult for you to make our clothes and equipment invisible too?" I hastily made some adjustments to the spell. "Now the main thing is to not get lost," Val muttered. But as soon as he moved, the blurry contours of the body appeared. The troll froze and everything disappeared again. "It won't be better," I assured the guys. "Well, at least it's something." Lon took a few steps, getting used to invisibility. "Get ready. I'm opening the door." Oh, what a tricky game these Raxas are. And who just invented it? He was a big-headed guy. You should... It's not like throwing dice on the floor. You have to think about it. Master, however, gets angry when the guards at the post play Raxa. They say that whatever, this, what's his name? Well, when you have to keep your eyes open, it falls. Who is... But who is there to guard? Who to watch? Now, if Shurp and Gwen, who are keeping watch in 7 Krogs, rise an alarm, then we will grab our weapons. But for now... Oh, Oh, fuck it, the unicorn. The dragon thrown the unicorn from 3 to 1 again. Here, get the Zuhan. What? Eat it? What? How did you eat it? Where did you get them? Where did you get trump cards? Show me your sleep. No? That's why you have nothing there, because you managed to throw it already. First time to play and then sit down to play, the second player grumbled, moving both sapphires towards him. Shall we throw it again? Let's throw it. It's impossible that I won't get even this time. The game has been going on for a long time with varying success. The sapphires wandered from paw to paw, the bulldogs lazily, more out of habit, quarreled, slipping triangular chips cut out of wood, as if they were making a multicolored mosaic. And here for you is Kraken with a file. Where did you get the file from? You threw it off at the last level. I didn't throw it away, I held it. Look, everything is written down. There was no file. How could it have happened if my chimera got destroyed by it? Come on, here is your chimera, between the basilisk and the flamer. Ah, so I have a chimera in stock. Get it. Hit. Get more. Cover him from the third. Okay, out. Let's go to the second row. Where out? Wait, you bastard. I still have a knight in stock. I sneezed at your knight. Olga raised his paw with a chip, but didn't have time to put it down. The door, majestically turning on its hinges, swept the molten mosaic aside and scattered it in the corners. The guards jumped up, snatching short broadswords from their thin twin sheaths. What the hell? There is no one. Did it open on its own? What do you mean its own? You idiot kept propping it with your back. As soon as you moved away, it opened up. But it seemed to be locked. It seemed. Did you check? No. Well, then shut up. You did it on purpose. To kick off the Raxa because you were scared of my knight. Found something to scare me. I have a full set of shells. Put it in your... Having slammed the door, the Baltic again sat on the floor picking up the scattered chips. 20, 30, 70, 119. Where is another one? Waldock looked around in confusion. Oh, there it is, against the wall. Give it to me. The second guard reached for a chip and sharply pulled the paw away. I stumbled upon something, he squealed, rubbing his eyes in bewilderment. Hit it with a broadsword, the first chuckled mockingly. The second one took the joke as a valuable advice, but before he could raise his sword, something flashed in the air. The chip jumped onto his palm and jumped to the side. No, the chip jumped a foot in the air and moved to the side. Ah, damn you! Both guards hastily jumped up and stared at the living rocks, like noble maidens at a mouse. Without saying a word, they pulled out their broadswords and began to sneak up on it from both sides. But then there was a demanding knock on the door of the empty room. The bulldogs jumped up. The first one pressed his finger to his lips and, tiptoeing towards the door, pulled it towards himself. There was no one in the cave or in the corridor. The second bulldog, remembering the chip, turned round. It was laying in the same place, and when the guard carefully extended his hand towards it, offered no resistance. Turning the rocks in his hands in bewilderment, the bulldog returned to the door. It's just demonic, Is there a knocker in the edit or something? The master seems to have completely eradicated them. Yeah, you can't get rid of them, the Waldok spoke in a timid whisper. What are we going to do? Shall we report to the elder? Why report? What report? How did our rugs just jump in on the floor? It is forbidden to play them while on duty. Forbidden, agreed the forest. Shall we throw it one more time? It is possible. The second one did not object. Damn foul! He managed to step on the rugs that stuck on the saw. It's good that Leon didn't wait and distracted the guard's attention by knocking on the door and quickly retreating to the side. Something was indeed wrong in Moldavir. Waldek City looked like a multi-tiered underground prison. Monotonous corridors, identical doors leading to cells like the one we left. We never saw any of the civilians, only warriors, fully armed and certainly in pairs. If one is dozing, the second is on guard. Torches burned brightly, both in rings and simply stuck into cracks in the walls, as if the illumination of the city has recently been hastily increased. The guards clearly did not attach much importance to the great mission entrusted to them to protect the city from an incomprehensible enemy. The Waldoks played cards, dice, and draxas, sipped dubious liquor from homemade wineskins, chatted and yawned with all their might, blankly looking through me at the opposite wall. Still trying to avoid direct glances, we crept along the corridor, casting whitish shadows indistinguishable from torchlight. Leon was walking first. Just in case, I held him by the hem of the jacket, afraid of losing sight of him, although there was no sight as such, a faint flickering ahead, a wisp of fog melting in the stale air of the catacombs. Val seemed to have no need for the eyesight. He followed us unerringly, occasionally touching my shoulder as a sign of danger if one of the guards began to stare after us too suspiciously. I thought we were going straight, but then I noticed that the corridor was imperceptibly going left and down, twisting like a spiral. On the third or fourth turn, ore veins began to gleam metallic in the stone walls. The corridor itself had expanded. Now it was impossible to reach the ceiling even with a two-arching pole, and the same pole would have bit across the road. The city seemed extinct, only the crackling of torches and the occasional rustling sound from behind the locked doors. Moreover, the guards also disappeared. Leon, are you sure we should move on? I whispered, tugging at the vampire's jacket. I feel like we're sneaking down a dragon's esophagus and wondering where the dragon is. Like, I don't want him to close his teeth behind our backs. There is not much left, he whispered back. The stone is very close. The silence was broken by a mocking, rattling laugh. My spell shattered. Invisibility rolled off us like water off fed geese. The vampire and the troll, as if in command, drew their swords and took up a fighting position back to back, trying in vain to find the enemy with their eyes. Closer than you think, vampire, the voice said after laughing, and the corridor floated before my eyes, dissolving into the darkness of oblivion. Lecture 17. Necromancy. Olga! Olga! Wake up! The first thing I felt was pain in my shoulders and arm joints. Slowly coming to my senses, I realized that my arms were twisted up and numb under the weight of my limply sagging body. I tried to prop myself up with my legs, but I didn't succeed right away. They moved apart and were betraying me like I was a cheerful peasant wandering from the tavern after midnight. My arms never dropped, but the sharp pain in my shoulders subsided. Volka, stop fooling around! Open your eyes! I opened it for some reason, only the left one. The first thing it focused on was Val, chained to the opposite wall with handcuffs thrown over a hook on a long chain. Something told me, obviously not logical thinking in the right, not the logical thinking that was in a right eye state, that I was in an equally deplorable state. Turning my head slightly, I saw Leon, a much stronger chain of a different alloy and thickness bound the vampire's arms and legs. What a terrible dream, I muttered, closing my eyes. Volka! The indignant cry of the troll made me open both eyes and begin to think. What's happening? Where are we? Ask something easier. I shook my head, shaking off the remnants of oblivion. We were in a fairly spacious room, or rather a cave, but so exquisitely furnished that its underground location was almost not felt. Most of the room was occupied by a low, flat stone, white and smooth, the size of a dinner table for a dozen people, with split rings protruding from it. An altar, I realized. Altar? Against the wall, under long shelves of books, there stood a real table, brown polished, littered with papers, scrolls, uncut precious stones, some pieces of iron, from behind which the tip of a quill pen standing in equal proudly peeked out. On the floor lay a tapestry of the finest elven work, depicting a forest in a stream of light. The play of shadows gave birth to strange animals, birds, butterflies, flower buds that appeared for a moment and immediately disappeared under a casual glance. On the priceless thing, like on an ordinary floor rag, were clearly visible dirty traces of Voldok's paws. I turned my eyes upward. The entire vault of the cave was lined with precious stones. The glare of light on the sharp edges dazzled my eyes. The stones were selected in such a way that they formed intertwining circles, stars and triangles inscribed into each other. The motley kaleidoscope of patterns dazzled me so much that I didn't immediately realize that they formed a giant pentagram. Not five, not 500, but tens and hundreds of thousands of stones. What is it? For what? Just decoration? Why is it on a ceiling? As far as I knew, the victim had to be placed in the center of the pentagram, and I had no idea how this could be done. Chick, get us out from the scrap metal, Val asked in a whistling whisper. My magic has disappeared, I whispered back. Someone blocked it. We fell silent when we heard shuffling steps in the corridor. The key scraped in the hole and the door swung open. The small, bony, hunched old man carefully covered it behind his back and lowered the latch. Under the old man's feet was a shaggy-haired little Voldok, a former thief. Well, how are my long-awaited guests feeling? The old man rasped, scanning us with his prickly, deep-set eyes. Unlike the master herbalist, the newcomer was completely bald and compensated for the lack of a beard with bushy eyebrows that looked like pieces of cotton wool. Around the old man's neck hung a platinum pendant on a roughly wrought gold chain, either a crushed mouse or a mole in an equally deplorable state. The Waldock King himself. Leon grimaced and hissed slightly in pain. What, don't like it? The old man asked sarcastically. There is no point in reading other people's thoughts without permission. You shouldn't do that. I have a special amulet for such impudent people. The deeper you dig, the more painful it gets. We were gloomily silent in the best traditions of epics about the princess captured by Sdivik. Was this what you were looking for? The old man nodded towards the chair on which our sword was casually lying. You can take it. I don't need it. And you're unlikely to need it anymore. Sorry, one moment. Well, if you hear some other music overlapping my voice, it is because my neighbor needs to die. Okay. Digging into my chin with fingers dry like spider legs and tenacious like crayfish claws, the old man forced me to raise my head. It, it is this one? The old man sternly asked the little bulldog. The thief nodded eagerly. Great, leave us, and tell Vimra with Mog and Jaisha to come to me immediately. The little bitch quickly slipped out of the room, closing the door behind itself. I raised my upper lip angrily, and the old man hastened to pull his hand away. Wonderful, he drawled, rubbing his dry palms in ecstasy. A maiden and a vampire with the white hair. Fabulous. I never counted on such luck. And what did you count on? I couldn't bear it, I asked. It's always nice to know about the enemy's plans. Well, you see, girl, the old man was filled with irrepressible joy on the occasion of our capture, and he wanted to share his joy with someone. Catching a vampire is extremely difficult. It is impossible to track them down. They're invisible to amulets, his appearance is ordinary, and the vampires rarely smile. There is only one thing left to do. Set a trap, and such that no one except the vampire will fall into it, which means the bait must be very specific. And what is more specific than one of the witch's circle artifacts? From Leon's blazing eyes I understood that, yeah, he was correct. I based my plans on the fact that vampires, these lurkers and over-insurers, reaching the point of absurdity in their aloofness, would not turn to the coven of magicians for help, the old man continued. But I came across not just a stupid vampire, but a complete idiot. As I expected, he did not go to the magisters. He took with him an equally empty-headed adept, who did not bother to disguise her spells, and a troll whose notoriety flies a good 100 miles before him. And with this, gods forgive me, he tried to stealthily infiltrate the necromancer's lair. I respect you for your courage, but stupidity should be punished. You can talk between yourself one last time. I still need to prepare something for the ceremony. For what ceremony? I blurted out against my will. For sacrifice, of course, the old man answered calmly, putting his glasses on his nose and carefully opening one of the books by bookmark. Hey, no, we didn't agree like that, I screamed. Stop these medieval things immediately. I will complain to the coven. Complain, complain, the old man mechanically repeated. Ghosts are always complaining about something, usually without any reason. A nog here for no reason. The old man, no longer paying attention to my protests, swept the papers off the table, laid out some cunning tweezers, hooks and some sharpened steel rods on it, dragged a bronze tripod from the corner of the room and solemnly placed it in the center of the table. A flame spontaneously flared up under the tripod. It danced along the polished tabletop, leaving no trace. A fist thundered at the door of the old man. Without turning around, snapped his fingers, and the bolt itself froze above the hooks. A good dozen bulldog crowded the corridor, but only 3 entered the room. The rest remained on guard behind the again locked door. Master, growled the tallest one, wearing open-work chainmail, clearly taken from a dead dwarf, and a helmet decorated with horns that looked like cows. By your order, half of the guards were removed, the torches were extinguished, and the miners were sent out to work. The first floor was... There is unease on the first floor. We saw some kind of creature. It didn't eat anyone, but looked like it was predatory. What does it look like? Dogs know it. Nobody really noticed. Well, then notice and kill it, and make sure that I'm not distracted by trifles anymore. Let's get started, I guess. From a girl. She will outline the path, and I'll practice at the same time. Sacrificing a vampire is much more difficult. There are some little tricks. Here you have to act subtly, but on a grand scale. Vampire lord, noble prey. Did not expect. If the ritual is carried out correctly, yes, I was extremely lucky. Which cannot be said about you. And I, Val sounded offended. I am not attracted to a girl, but she lets a vampire. Maybe you'll apologize and let me go? Like, I don't look like a girl and much less like a vampire. Oh, and you, my dear troll, I'll try a couple of new tortures and give you to my little pets. They are omnivores, you see, and always hungry. The bulldogs licked their lips hopefully. Oh, you old brat! Val was indignant, pulling on the chains. Let me just get to you. Oh, I know you! I was happy for some weird reason. You are the crazy archmage, Corius Peresliega. Your portrait hangs in the school hall under the sign "The city guards is looking for him." Oddly enough, the old man was not fluttered by universal fame. Crazy? He rasped, changing his face and convulsively clenching his fists. Oh no. On the contrary, I am too smart to be appreciated. You should have kept your mouth shut, Val grimaced. For what? It won't be worse. It just couldn't get any worse. And for what merits is he wanted? Leon asked calmly. I don't remember exactly, but it seems for like a toad, not a viper, or a leech. What leech? Well, he turned the princess of Valmania into a leech. Or the prince. No, I think it was a princess. And in my opinion, I think it was a viper. To the frog! Unable to bear it, the archmage let it slip. I turned this ugly bitch into a sweet, nice, quiet grass frog. And not only didn't he turn her, I continued, refreshing my memory of this scandalous story, with the Valmenia's princess, but he also spread a rumor that if a young handsome prince kisses a frog, it will turn into a princess again. It was a good idea, Alona admitted. The problem is that for some reason the young and handsome princes were not eager to kiss the frog. Princes, as you know, are spoiled people. Even without frogs, their brides are dime a dozen. They began to diligently avoid invitations to court balls and feasts because after heavy drinks, not just the frog, you would kiss your own mother-in-law on both cheeks. Then the frog's dad appointed a reward, and a very substantial one. The princess, keen on carnivals, games, and all kinds of expensive amusements, found this option very acceptable and got to the business. The opposite situation developed. The frog, naturally, did not even think of turning into anyone, but the princess lined up next to her. They came several times a day with fake mustaches, noses, and hair, posing as their own brothers, cousins, uncles, and other distant relatives. Some made a fortune from the frog, paid off foreign debts, and filled the coffers. The opposite processes took place with the Vermenians' treasury. The bottom began to show through. One fine morning, having signed another pile of bills tactfully marked for kissing, the king became furious, scattered the foreign princess with a scepter, grabbed the unfortunate frog by the hind legs, and threw her out of the window into the deep castle moat with water. That same night, the wet, unhappy, green but completely humanoid princess timidly knocked on the door of her father's castle. As it turned out, an unnamed representative of the frog family cast um, yeah, managed to lift the curse absolutely free of charge by offering the princess a paw and a spawning. Since then, they say the princess has been a little out of her mind, sitting at night on the bank of the moat, listening to the croaking and sadly sighing. Great love always ends tragically, the vampire summed up. And they're looking for him for such a small thing? Actually, no, I shrugged. He's wanted for 3 murders, the explosion of the royal palace, experiments on people, and illegal necromancy. And the frog is just an autobiographical fact. That's enough, the Archmage unceremoniously interrupted the flow of my eloquence. Put on the altar. The sacrifice took place in a calm, one might say friendly atmosphere. I resignedly allowed the Voldags to lay me on the altar and crucify me with iron hoops. The necromancer, bent over with a hook, was looking for something in a black book, rustling yellow pages. My companions watched with interest. I thought that such a ritual required a virgin, Leon whispered, leading towards the troll. My companions were chained at a sufficient distance from each other, and the vampire's outrageous remark reached both my ears and the dry ears of the necromancers. I am using a virgin in it, he muttered angrily, sliding his gnarled finger along the lines of the book. Well, yeah, Leon remarked thoughtfully, while sniffed, grunted, and laughed shamelessly. What is this? The old man laid down the pages with a quill pen and turned to me, pushing his glasses onto his forehead. Answer me, maiden. Are you still a maiden? Yes, I muttered with an air of offended innocence. Well, you see, the old man sighed with relief and returned to the book. Who is going to admit it? Val remarked again in a whisper. Considering that the troll's voice is much louder and shriller than the vampire's soft baritone, the whisper came out very loud. Come on, I'm a virgin, honestly. I couldn't stand it. Don't listen to them, they want to disrupt your ceremony. Sacrifice me quickly before I get pneumonia on your altar. What nobility, the troll sighed again in a whisper. She agrees to sacrifice herself just to disrupt the ritual. Darling, don't do this, Leon begged with captivating sobs in his voice. Let me alone bear retribution for my sins, and I will die happy remembering the nights you gave me. I beg me, tell me that you have forgiven me. Never! Hey, let me forgive you and these bold fagurs will let me go, suggested the troll. What is he talking about? The necromancer was seriously worried. He even dropped the pen and closed the book. Stop your dirty hints! I screamed, twisting my head to spit in shameless eyes of my traveling colleagues. I'll check it myself now. The magician couldn't resist, rushing to the shelf with amulets and other trinkets. I will check what this vampire is saying. Where is it? It was lying here. Where could I have put it? Who should know better than him? Val laughed. I mean, he checked it at every stop. And you are jealous, right? I completely went mad, carrying out the long-awaited but quick speed which settled on the old man's sleeve. You see, she confessed, the troll announced jubilantly. Get her away, the archmage ordered with disgust, abandoning the search for the necessary amulet. Don't you dare! This is discrimination! I demand to be sacrificed! But the Balzacs hastily untied me from the altar and escorted me to the already familiar rings in the wall. Where is this damned world coming to? The old man rustled, trying to find peace in the treasured book. I was ready to swear that upon leaving Starman she was still a girl. Otherwise she wouldn't have been able to repel the Olga spell. But since the Lord himself was in my hands, we can't do without her. Get this molester here. Leon approached the altar with visible indifference. Waldo craftily pulled the chain, forcing the vampire to lie down on the stone slab. Enchanted chains, the archmage announced proudly, especially for our dear guest. I guessed it, the vampire said, arrogantly leaning back. Steel hoops immediately snapped around his ankles, wrists, stomach and forehead. The chains from Leon were also not removed, they were secured in rings along the edges of the altar. After slobbering on a sharpened coal, the old man with a book in his hand began to make careful outlines, tracing the muscular chest of the vampire with the coal. Having depicted 7 or 8 rooms, the necromancer put a thick point between the 5th and 6th free on the left side and stepped back, critically examining his work. Will this wash off later? Leon asked suspiciously. Yeah, it will. Wash off, promised the old brat. Having admired the intricate symbols, the old man grunted and reached into the wall cabinet and pulled out a tall clay pot with an ornament of leashes and cucumbers. Whispering and snapping his fingers, the magician tore the lid off the pot and the cold blue light poured out. In the pot smoldered the coals of salamander bones. They were used to temper magical swords. You could pick up a piece of coal and even swallow it without wincing. Only contact with iron caused a violent temperature surge. Confirming my guess, the necromancer lowered something like a long, narrow knife on a wooden handle into the pot. A shiver of sparks sprayed out of the pot, and a hissing sound was heard. And what will this criminal act give you? The vampire asked ironically. Eternal youth, the necromancer purred absent-mindedly under his breath, watching the red-hot blade. To do this, I am going to pass the threshold using steps, with your help. I mean, you're still looking good. The troll bent his heart. It was time to bury the old man, I must admit. I really wanted to say it out loud. Chick, did you understand what he said? Unfortunately, I did. The Porsche theory. The threshold is a transition to another energy level where new, qualitatively different spells become available. If the difference between the levels is too great, the threshold is high and it is impossible to overcome it forcefully. And steps are small sub-levels along which you can reach the threshold in separate steps, basically. And we are those same steps, Val realized. Looks like it. And at the moment of death, a colossal release of energy occurs. Any experienced magician can use it, especially a necromancer. Why did he need a vampire? I mean, he could catch girls in surrounding villages and it wouldn't be a problem. I shrugged. Well, maybe maidens are even more rare. Waldox and the troll started laughing. Lon smiled, the necromancer only shrugged his shoulders in disgust. Maidens, black cats, newborn babies, they all have one flaw. The moment of death is just a moment. And I need long, painful agony, the old man rasped. The necromancer's pupils reflected the red-hot edges of the blade. Only a potentially immortal creature is capable of it. A vampire in the prime of life. Because after 300 years they are just as vulnerable as mere mortals. The Lord is absolutely immortal and can die as long as I need. An hour, 2, day, a week, day, month. However, 15 minutes will be enough for me. Well, thanks for that, Don grumbled. I conducted many experiments, the necromancer continued. I looked for a suitable victim, going through all the intelligent and intelligent races, all living and all undead. There is not a single creature left that has not been sacrificed to the altar of science. Is this what you call science? I couldn't stand it. A series of cold-blooded murders for the benefit of yourself, an immortal. Not only myself, the necromancer interrupted me irritably. All the chosen ones. The entire coven of mages. Achieving immortality was the goal of my scientific work, which was funded by the coven itself for many years. And so, when my research was finally crowned with success and I presented the final report to the Magic Council, my topic was unexpectedly closed, banned, classified, all the records were taken away and destroyed, and the laboratory was refurbished and given to the mercy of yellow-haired alchemist graduate students obsessed with creation of the Philosopher's Stone. Philosopher's Stone! Oh! Trade immortality for a pursuit of a myth. This coven is so stupid and limited that even the mineral they are looking for will not help them. That's why I have no place in it. No, it has no place next to me. By the end of the monologue, the necromancer no longer spoke but screamed, spraying saliva and gesticulating with a hot knife. An instinctive fear of crazy people shut our mouths, not allowing us to make another bar. Probably the council of the Coven of Mages experienced the same feelings, listening to the inspired speeches of the crazy archmage. Gain immortality at the cost of other people's lives. The Coven would not do this even for the purpose of an experiment. However, I understood this man perfectly well. Yes, magicians live a long time, but they are not immortal either. Magic can slow down the aging process, but it cannot completely stop it. And the more we live, the less we want to die, no matter how many stories are told about magicians who are tired of life. Master, there is less than an hour left before dawn. The boulder grumbled, keeping a respectful distance from the necromancer. The archmage stopped mid-sentence and looked at the darkened blade in bewilderment. Damn it! He hissed, hastily plunging the murder weapon into a pot of coals. Cool down already? How come I didn't check the new batch? Damn dwarfs! Swindlers, they cook the olive by eye. Well, they'll get what they deserve. It's okay, we're not in a hurry, I assured politely. It's only in fairy tales that evil witches use a broom to mix dragon bile, bad blood, and crushed red paws in a cauldron. And similar rubbish that exudes an incredible stench. The school museum kept reference samples of such ingredients. Stone Age, Almid spoke contemptuously of them. The modern necromancer needed some distilled water, poured into a flat iron dish on a tripod, and a factory package of powder Warlock Collection Number 6, flavored good until 704. As a magician tore the corner of the bag and poured its contents into the boiling water in a circular motion, while simultaneously stirring everything with a wooden spatula. The Warlock Collection brewed jelly and gurgled viscously. There was a pleasant smell of lilies of the valley. The necromancer carefully watched the cooking process. As soon as the potion changed its original grey color to a poisonous green, the magician removed the dish from the fire. The brew immediately stopped boiling, and a wavy stream of smoke rose from the center of the dish. Taking the dish in one hand and the scroll covered in calculations in the other, the necromancer walked around the altar in small steps without taking his eyes off the parchment and quickly whispering a smell. The smoke, without dissipating, flowed like a narrow ribbon behind the necromancer until it closed into a ring and only then began to rise to the ceiling. Leon was the first to notice the dim glow of the pentagram. The vampire coughed discreetly, attracting my attention. One glance at the ceiling was enough to detect the unnatural phosphorescence of the emeralds set along the outer edge of the pentagram. The necromancer put the dish aside, crossed his arms over his chest, and whispered 3 words known to any adept. Submit to my will. The emeralds flashed. The rays were projected into a clear pentagram on the altar, green and pulsating. Out of the emeralds came the torn of rubies. A scarlet rune appeared near Leon's right hand, meaning darkness and chaos. Turquoise, the blue rune of fertility. In a narrower sense, the masculine aspect. Significantly, a beard between the legs. Diamonds, white rune of the soul. It timidly positioned itself opposite the liver. Another group of emeralds inside the pentagram, rune of life. Yellow topaz, rune of reincarnation. Sometimes it is drawn on the gravestones as a symbol of eternity. I didn't know the rest of the symbols, even though I passed the Kabbalistic test with an excellent mark. However, no. Last, near the back of the head, the black rune of death slowly appeared. I watched in fascination the awakening of supernatural forces, simultaneously admiring and horrifying by their scope. One of the desk drawers moved out by itself, and the old man carefully, with both hands, like a newborn baby, took out the black grimoire from there. The leather binding, stylized as a box, was surrounded by silver hoops that converged to the lock. First, he raised it up as if asking for a blessing. Then he pressed it to his heart, whispering with his eyes closed. Continuing whispering, he pulled the book forward on his palms, and the lock clanged on its own accord. The Byzantine creaked as it opened, and the pages rustled, yellow, corroded by time, as if charred at the edges. The necromancer began to read straight from the page, in a loud, well-trained voice that did not fit in with the usual senile rattling. The pentagram on the ceiling disappeared, dissolving into a grey, swirling cloud, from which multicolored runes emerged in beams of light, like sunlight through the storm windows. It smelled of wind and ozone. Initially, a light breeze intensified as he read, eventually turning into a real hurricane. Leon closed his eyes. His long hair, pressed to the altar by the wind, wriggled around his head like snakes. Papers fluttered around the room. The tapestry fluttered with tassels like an overloaded flying carpet. The hurricane did not bring pleasure to the necromancer either, becoming an unexpected and annoying hindrance. He tried to calm the atmospheric phenomenon with the help of an amulet, but lightning spat from the clouds, splitting the amulet in half and burning a large hole in the tapestry. Desperate to calm the elements, the necromancer began the final phase of the ritual. Alas, sacrificing a vampire against a wind that was not foreseen by calculations turned out to be very inconvenient. The knife fluttered in a powerful stream of air like a roach grabbed by the tail, trying to slip out of his fingers. It was still possible to keep it in an upright position, but with a downward movement the tip swung sideways, diving under the hand holding it. Without knowing about the adverse weather conditions, one might have thought that the necromancer was trying to commit suicide. And then the prisoners began to giggle, first furtively, then out loud. The victim was especially sophisticated. More precisely, aim more accurately, the vampire encouraged the necromancer. Otherwise, all work is in vain. The old man was no longer just trembling, he was shaking. He held the knife with both hands, but drew such circles with them that on Don's chest it was necessary to draw a dot. Not a dot, but a target with point values. Listen, should I impale myself on it? Come on, quickly. The tip is cooling down again, it's turning black. By the way, do you know why such rituals are advised to be carried out as quickly as possible? The necromancer angrily gnashed his teeth, not succumbing to the vampire's provocations and trying to overcome the pressure of the wind. That's because, Leon continued calmly, that not a single enchanted chain will hold me for more than 10 minutes. At that second, the chain on his right arm burst clankingly in the middle. The coop on his wrist tore like a rotten bandage. The vampire, without thinking twice, swung and hit the necromancer with a fragment dangling from his arm. The bolt skull made a booming sound. The old man rolled his eyes and fell on his back, sweeping the pot of the table. Coals rolled across the floor. The Waldogs, who had until now stood silently by the wall, grabbed their swords and maces and rushed to the altar. Leon writhed in his bonds like crucian carp in a hot frying pan. You could hear the diverging links cracking. Another 5 seconds and the vampire would have been free, but he didn't even have one. The Waldog's maces soared over Leon's head, and the old man who woke up rose to his knees with a drawn-out groan, rubbing his bruised temple. "Mother!" I screamed mindlessly in despair. The door shuddered and flew out of the stone, opening along with the frame, slamming the necromancer who had just begun to come to life. An angry manticore burst into the room. She very vaguely resembles Manka, our affectionate kitty. Tousled fur and outstretched wings made her 3 times larger. Her ever-surprised face turned into a demonic maw, in which burning eyes and drooling fangs deserved special attention. The ears were pressed so tightly to the head that they looked like two black stripes, and a stinger swayed menacingly between them. It seemed that Manka's tail lived a separate life. It wriggled, contracted, and made false lunges like a disturbed cobra in a hood of loose tassels. Waldex turned around. Boundless surprise was reflected on the blunt muzzle, which was quickly replaced by concentrated lust for murder. Bent down, he drew a white strap of blade through the air, whistling softly in front of his nose in front of the nose of a twirling kitty. Without further ado, Manka barked at his hairy belly. The sound wave effectively rolled the bulldog on the crest and slammed him into the wall just under the deer's antlers. The antlers fell immediately. The bulldog fell a little later, leaving behind a clear imprint. The second bulldog backed towards the door, but the third was not timid. Spinning the mace over his head, he threw it at the grinning Manka's face. She deftly caught the mace, held it in her mouth like a cane, growling and angrily shaking her tail, and then clenched her jaws a little tighter, and spat out the middle part of a steel handle. The ends fell off on their own. The impressive display of force horrified the enemies. To my delight, the Waldex could run not only on the floor but also on the walls and even on the ceiling, which I never expected from such large and clumsy creatures. Manka did not claim the ceiling. It was difficult for her to flap her wings in a low room cluttered with things, but she broke and dropped everything that could be broken or dropped. Fortunately for the Waldex, Manka behaved like an inexperienced cat. Chasing 3 mice at once, she failed to catch a single one. Tired and having driven the Waldex onto the shelves, the kitty walked under them with such a terrible hiss that the blood ran cold. Meanwhile, Leon managed to deal with the chains, search the pockets of the unconscious old man, find the keys in them, and unlock our shackles. The broken chains didn't seem to bother the vampire himself, and plus the time was running out. "Let's get out of here, and quickly," he commanded, pointing to the door, or rather to the hole that replaced it. The hurricane spreading like a funnel from the cloud did not subside. The runes reflected on the altar smoked, every single one of them changing color to black. "Very quickly," I corrected, stretching my aching wrists, "because any magical power that is summoned but not used eventually turns into a shockwave." "What?" Val widened his eyes. "Have you seen how a fire damp explodes?" Convinced, the troll rushed to the door. The vampire paused, breaking the stone from the head of the sword with his bare hands. "Where?" A huge red-eyed Waldeck appeared on the threshold in heavy chainmail and a helmet pulled down over his eyes. In his hands the monster clutched a spiked club of terrifying size. "Come on, go back." "Manka, fast!" I commanded desperately. Manticore was just waiting for this. Jumping over the growling and screaming heap, we rushed along the corridor. Val in front, me behind, Lone is a step behind me. The clatter of the fragments of chains dangling on it strangely added to my loveliness. A dull rumble echoed under the arches of the tunnel. The earth shook, the the earth shook, and a haze of earthen crumbs began to creep from the ceiling. One could only hope that the troll knew the way. I didn't have the courage to clarify whether this was so. It was dark in the tunnel. The rare torches in the rings of the walls barely smoldered. A group of Voldex appeared from an adjacent tunnel. They rushed at us, but then there was a roar, a grumble, a sound of falling. They howled, turned around, and ran away. Now we were chasing them. Val turned into the same tunnel, a copy of the previous one. The stabbing in the left side, which theoretically should have been replaced by a second wind, was replaced by stabbing in both sides. The left wall of the roadway was bulging with a stripe, as if a giant worm had crawled behind it. The wall cracked, and from the open niches people began to... like... Waldogs began... no. Skeletons in full combat gear with axes drawn began to fall out or under our feet. I couldn't resist a squeal jumping to the side. "Leaders!" Val shouted. The troll was almost out of breath. The experienced warrior clearly... The troll was almost... no. The troll was hardly out of breath. The experienced warrior clearly regulated his breathing. "Waldogs bury their dead in the walls of the tunnels. Don't be afraid, they're dead. They're digging to the surface." Sense that was rubbish. The troll continued, deftly jumping over the steel armor of the next dead man. "It looks like the tunnel behind us has collapsed, and they are rushing to dig a new one to escape." The second worm passed along the right wall. "They dig faster than we run!" I spat out the last word with blood. My chest was bursting from lack of air. "So we have to run faster!" The troll barked, and at that moment another dead man fell out of the niche right in front of him. It was not a skeleton, not yet a skeleton, although the rotten flesh was already sliding off the bones, and worms were swarming in the wet fur. Despite the decomposition, it was clear that the corpse was terribly disfigured. "Hey, this is the last leader. It seems he was strongly against the change of power." "Yeah," Lon exhaled. The noise grew. The corridor was shaking in agony. One of the ceiling beams behind me became disgustingly brittle, folded in half and fell down, buried by an ocean wave. There was a whiff of wind in the back, a whiff of dampness and cold. The earth ran behind us, like water breaking a dam along the bed of a dry river. "Here the grease!" Val cursed, suddenly stopping and blocking our path. "What are you?" I faltered. At the end of a long and straight corridor, the torches went out one by one. Pitch darkness rushed toward us, eating away pieces of the illuminated space. The corridor was crumbling on both sides. We will make a 5-minute break here. Thank you, and see you later. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, it took longer. I had a little situation, but I'm back. Not forgetting to take this thing off. Okay, where did we stop? We come into lecture 18. Special workshop. It was a strange and terrible feeling. When deathly silence pulsates painfully in your ears, interrupted by heavy breathing, and the menacing tremor of the earth spreads throughout your whole body, which you are unable to overcome. The earthen flow stopped, separated by 10 elbows of the tunnel. The only torch smoked dimly. We stared at each other like prisoners, escaping from different cells and crossing underground passages. What do we do? Val, as if nothing had happened, sat down and began shaking sand out of his boot. And what do you suggest? Nothing. But I really don't want to die. You're a witch, so do magic. It was easy to say. With difficulty calling my scattering thoughts to order, I went through my arsenal. It got even scarier. It seemed that without a note, I wouldn't even remember the simplest formula for energy conversion. You will remember, Lonseth called me. You know it. Do not be anxious. I looked back. Scarlet reflections from the smoking torch danced across the vampire's face. Lon looked intently into my eyes. Everything is fine, he repeated. Start. I'll tell you. I'll help you if something happens. And do not resist. Don't think about me at all. And I suddenly understood why magic didn't work on Leon. In the vicinity of a magician, he himself is a magician. The vampire uses the enemy's knowledge to counterattack. This means that in order to destroy him with the help of magic, it is enough to pit against him a half-educated person trained to kill, but not to defend himself. Where famous magicians were defeated, an 8-year adept could win. I remembered the diplomatic dinner in the gala, the frightened faces of the elders. Leon closed his eyes for a moment and bowed his head slightly. Sorry, I said quietly. I'm sorry, now I know. Are you going to do magic or should we take up the shovels? Val couldn't stand it. Without knowing it, the troll once again diffused the situation. Yeah. There are two options. I can use a directed blow to make a passage like a Valdex hole, but I'm afraid that with such shaking it will immediately collapse. Or I can try to teleport us directly to the surface of the earth. Try? Honestly, I've never done anything like that. I shrugged. Well, let's do the passage first and then according to the situation. I cannot. I have enough energy for one spell. They are very powerful, and even though It will have to be on blood. I took the troll's loud swearing and the vampire's reproachful silence as agreement. Taking the cord with Aventurine from my neck, I began to scratch lines and runes on the floor with the sharp end of a tooth. Carrying 3 people at the same time required concentration much greater than could be achieved simply in the mind. Leon's help was not needed. Formulas came to mind as I thought about them. Are you sure this here will work? The troll was the first to not stand the agonizing wait. 50%. It turns out that the second option accounts for the same amount. These 50 are somehow more probable. So, work! Don't talk. Okay, don't rush me. I drew the last line, sincerely hoping that the triangle turned out equilateral. I didn't have any candles. They were replaced by splinters from a torch. The fragile, uneven fire barely held on to the charred tips. The slightest movement of air could undo all my efforts. The torch itself had to be extinguished so that it would not draw back the spell. The splinters were slightly smoldering. The most careful wave of the hand would send them into awe. What I was doing did not fit into any framework. Starting with the fact that, due to the low light, I could hardly see the ground and could miss when drawing, connecting the lines inaccurately. The most venerable magicians use a board polished to a shine, lined in advance with sockets for candles. My inspired improvisation was reminiscent of a shamanic ritual in a remote village. All that was missing was the enthusiastic cries of the exalted crowd and the squealing of the black pig on the altar. Boyhood, do not get distracted. Dissolved in the darkness, Leon was my invisible support. While he stood next to me, I heard his even breathing, felt the light touch of his hand, inhaled the familiar smell of a strong man confident in himself and in me. I was invulnerable and omnipotent. Stand opposite the corners of the triangle, but don't touch them, I commanded sharply. So, take a deep breath. I enchant you heavenly elements with my breath. I conjure you fiery elements with the flame burning in my heart. I conjure you the elements of water with my blood. I conjure you earthly elements with mortal human flesh. Take a piece of yourself. Recognize your daughter. Submit to my will. I briefly and angrily slashed myself across the palm of my hand with a fragment of granite. The damned splinters flashed dangerously, breaking my concentration. Biting my lip, I threw away the stone and cupped my hands, filling them with blood. A familiar pain tightened the lower abdomen like a steel hoop, turning into a hot pulsation of power. I have observed blood rituals more than once, and even participated in them, under the supervision of the teacher. Blood is alive, he intoned, as if casually tracing magical signs with raised hands. Life is power. Life has beginning and an end. Just like power. It grows along an arc, and along an arc it diminishes. For maximum benefit, you must draw it at the moment of greatest flowering. Focus your spell at the point between the ends of the arc. Take your time, but don't hesitate either. Your task is not to mutter a spell with expression, but to recognize a moment of action in a millennium of waiting. So, the maximum point. Wait for the point. Wave a spell. Everything is very simple. Last time I didn't succeed. I was a fraction of a second late and the arc dived steeply downwards, aimlessly dispersing the force, to the malicious giggling of my classmates. The strain, the power grew. The tips of the fingers began to glow, time slowed down, the sound stretched into an indistinct, monotonous hum. My whole body turned into a vibrating capacitor. Maybe it's time? No, it's still on the rise. Wait. Wait a little more. Drive away the hungry jaws of impatience, staring at the heart with icy fangs. Just don't rush. Don't be late. There are no more sounds, no light from splinters, no grey walls of the cave. Only a dazzling white stream of light dissolving consciousness. An endless arc goes up. An endless line. And then I became truly scared. The power didn't end, growing like an avalanche caused by the fall of a single pebble. More and more layers of it rose from the handful of blood, swirling around me in a luminous, translucent cocoon. It was too late to retreat. Lash with it was a maximum. I spread my palms. The blood flew like a burning lump into the center of the triangle, and without splashing, silently entered the floor. The triangle instantly became white hot, and Ida's skull-shaped muzzle appeared above it, snapped its mouth with a bark, accepting my sacrifice, and was not at all averse to accepting something more significant. The released power surged into the matrix of the spell, seething angrily in the too-tight shell, trying to tear it to pieces. I instinctively raised my hands in a protective gesture. The clumsy lines blinked, the splinters flashed along their entire length and crumbled into ashes. And nothing. The triangle has faded. The muzzle self-destructed with visible displeasure. You're kidding, Chick. The troll could not stand it. Cast yourself, I snapped. I did what I could. My hands were shaking slightly. The troll didn't even suspect that if I had waited just a split second, the wave of power would have simply swept us off the face of the earth, along with the cave, the Walda catacombs, and a good half of Beloria. Figuratively speaking, I extinguished the candle with a barrel of water. It took all of my reserve and part of my aura to curb the excess power of the spell, which made me noticeably nauseous. It would be nice to know what the barrel of water was used for. There was no visible change in our situation. We were still standing in a cramped nook, the ceiling was cracking, the ground was shaking, and then to all these pleasures was added the disgusting feeling of falling. It did not last long and ended with a strong shock. Unable to resist, I fell to my knees. Leon flapped his wings, and the troll cursed, and only commas were printable in his comment. There was silence. Bad silence, clearly planning some kind of dirty trick. It looks like a piece of the tunnel fell into the lower gallery with us, the vampire suggested. Wonderful, muttered Val. Here they would have dug us out even from the upper one. Cracks snaked across the floor and walls of the dead end. With a blood-chilling crunch, they bifurcated and intertwined, like arrows of frost growing on glass. We listened to the destructive process in reverent silence. Even Val did not dare to desecrate the last minute of his life with swearing. The cave collapsed silently. Thorny fragments pounded on my head and back. Squealing, I blindly stretched my arms up, and at the same instant Leon covered me with his body, squeezing me painfully in his arms. What difference does it make? I managed to think in confusion. Now hundreds of tons of rock will fall on us. One more pebble, one less. An iron hoop squeezed my chest. I took my last breath. It is so simple, and not scary at all. Through the stones, scattered rays of light reached me. solemn, blinding, extraterrestrial. They beckoned to me, foreshadowing freedom, peace, and bliss. When the pain in the body twisted by stones would go away, and my lungs would stop bursting from lack of air, and I would stop hearing the loud beating of my heart. And I will never again hear Leon's heart beating next to me. My most hated, most beautiful, most beloved man who will never know about it. This is the only thing I regretted in my last seconds. This is the only thing I regretted in my last seconds. Light filled my entire being. It seemed that I was dissolving in its radiance, rising up, carried away into the distance, becoming light myself. Wait a minute, I suddenly realized, but I've already seen it somewhere. And then I remembered. It was the sun. Yellow, bright and prickly in autumn. It stood at the zenith, and if Leon had not been lying on me like a dead weight, I would have been able to see clouds in the blue sky, flying over the barren trees, the spire of the teleportation tower, and the dumbfounded teacher with the same staff in his hand, as well as a group of future colleagues with hoes and large wicker baskets. Leon carefully raised his head. Small pebbles and dust fell like hail from his tangled hair. Nearby, like a zombie from the grave, a somewhat battered Val rose from a pile of stones. Shaking himself, the troll unceremoniously lifted the vampire by the scruff of the neck, and I finally saw all of the above. Except cabbage. Beautiful, white, selective cabbage, which a group of adepts led by a mentor was sent to harvest, because the ridge on which it grew just a minute ago was knee-deep in rubble. It seems I overdid a little. Instead of moving myself and my companions outside the catacombs, I moved the entire cave to the schoolyard. The awe on the faces of my colleagues, including the teacher, was my highest reward. Lecture 19. The final. There are moments in the life of any of us when we want to fall through the ground, burn to the ground, crumble into dust, and scatter to the wind. Alas, without a diploma from the School of Sorcerers, BTS, and Horribilists, this is almost impossible. Standing in front of the teacher, I passionately dreamed of a diploma. Leaving the office, Leon winked at me, but even knowing that the conflict was most likely resolved, I could not control the trembling in my knees. The magister was looking somewhere out the window. His face was thoughtful, detached. How angry the teacher must be not to show his anger. I had never seen him in this state before, and more than anything else, I did not want to see him now. Did he take the stone? The magister asked calmly. Seagulls were flying outside the window. They always appeared with the onset of cold weather, circling around the school with plaintive cries, as if saying goodbye to someone. Inventive human rumor called them the souls of dead magicians. The souls did not disdain scraps from the trash heap and littered the roofs quite materially. Yeah, the voice trembled treacherously. Okay, well, go. Write a report on the business trip forum. We'll sort it out at the council on Friday. I couldn't believe my ears. The teacher didn't shout that he was angry because he wasn't angry. Didn't I get expelled? I burst out. What kind of nonsense is this? The teacher frowned menacingly. Who told you? I heard it myself. Well, I was passing by accident. I was completely embarrassed. The teacher looked at me with his eyebrows knitted in surprise. Oh, silly girl, what did you imagine? Nobody was going to expel you. Yes, there was talk about the expulsion of 3 adepts, an inevitable post-session dropout. If you've decided to eavesdrop, do it wisely, stupid. Go write a report. I hesitated around the table, but the teacher demonstratively fenced me off with one of the pieces of paper and pretended to read. I began to long for my diploma with renewed vigor. Now, not for the sake of avoiding the conversation with the teacher, but to prevent him from avoiding. Alone left that evening. We stood in the yard, shivering from the piercing autumn wind, and did not know what to say to each other. I didn't want him to leave. He didn't want to leave, and we both understood that separation was inevitable. Aganyok, the brown stallion selected by the school to replace Volt, snored and danced restlessly under the vampire. Come to the game of a practice, Elon said after a little more silence. Are you serious? I asked incredulously. Adepts were usually sent to practice in distant villages, in groups of 2 or 3 people where they practiced their magic skills and wrote a diploma based on the results of their work. Of course, the game was much better than some small, small trios with foot and mouth cows. He nodded. Send me documents. I'll sign it. The silence was not allowed to resume when Val arrived in time, joyfully shouting from afar. Oh, there you are, Ghoul. I thought you were going to leave without saying goodbye. Goodbye. There was irony in John's voice. I also doubted that the troll was motivated by disinterested sentimentality. Oh no, not so fast. That's what I wanted to ask. Chick, how did you find out that Manya had followed you and was wandering through these her catacombs? If you didn't call her at the right moment, that's it, we were screwed. At that moment, the last thing I thought about was Manka, but I put on a meaningful look. The troll looked at me with obvious respect. The vampire just grinned into his neatly glued beard. I also wanted to ask someone something. Leon, what were you thinking about, well, when we were lying together under the rubble and still didn't know that we had been saved? The vampire was noticeably embarrassed. Yeah, well, all sorts of nonsense. He mumbled, staring at the horse's mane and fiddling with the reins. It's embarrassing to even remember. And you? Oh, I was afraid that I was the only one who was such a fool. Also, to be honest, all sorts of nonsense popped into my head. And Val intervened. I thought that the only more shameful thing than such an idiotic death was to be buried next to you two. During your lifetime, I was so fed up with you that if it weren't for the code of mercenaries, I would have spat on the fee and gone to hell. But since you didn't give a damn, you'll have to fork out, Hugo. 100 coins as agreed. Volmenia Zolotniks are better. Ratomsky Yelts will also do. What do you think I am? An exchange officer at Dwarven Bank? The vampire snorted, rummaging in his trouser pockets. Take what I give and say thank you. You haven't worked too hard these 3 days, mercenary. It would be better if I spent 3 days pushing trolleys in coal mines. The troll started and then shut up immediately when he saw the gem in Don's hand. A cut diamond, slightly larger than a pea, but so pure that any jeweler without hesitation would pay twice as much for it as the mercenary demanded. The last one, the vampire announced sadly, rolling the stone on his palm. Hey now, don't flatter yourself. This is not a premium for risk. This is split between you and Volha. I don't need anything, I was indignant. Don't insult your friends with money. You'll pay back in your own time, in a more dignified way. What? Will you refuse the debt? I won't take it under any pretext. You don't understand, Ron said patiently. I don't lend money. I return it. I return the debt. No, and don't try to persuade me. Persuade? God forbid. Sit without a scholarship. What? You don't know? You were deducted for the missing horse plus government harness. Exactly 80 coins your stipend for 4 months. But it's not fair, I howled. Winners are not judged. No, they are being put into debt pits, the troll assented maliciously. Give me a pebble, white-haired. I have a decent jeweler in mind. He will give me a real price, not like these market money changers. Leon looked at the troll strangely. The mercenary's outstretched hand hovered questioningly in the air. Give it to him, I thought. Don't make me smile tightly and falsely thank you for the money, which, even if well deserved, is still a shame to accept from your hands. Goodbye, Ghoul. It was a pleasure doing business with you. The troll chuckled, clenching his fist. Bye, chick. You know where to find me. I nodded, absent-mindedly, looking at my aching palm, covered with a darkened scab. The wound, contrary to expectations, healed quickly, literally in a matter of minutes. It ached and itched somewhere under the skin, but I didn't feel any inflammation. Perhaps a side effect of magical healing was making itself known. I was able to do it better and better, lately almost mechanically. To be honest, I didn't even remember how I healed this wound. Everything happened by itself, like a vampire. Because of the darkness, the puddle appears black. But where the light of the torches touches the water, scarlet reflections dance. A halo of blood slowly spreads and sways around my body. A magnificent sight. I'm not in a hurry. I'm watching. I stand nearby without casting a shadow. Unless can I tread, carry in Arguel. I shook my head, driving away the illusion. Come on, the vampire repeated impatiently. You do not trust me? What? It turned out that Leon extended his hand to me in farewell. Do I have a choice? Our palms joined in a farewell handshake, long, strong, and painful. I looked decisively into the grey, mocking eyes. Don't get your hopes up, Leon. Don't think that you can always lead me by the nose. I will not rest until I dismantle, brick by brick, the rampart of the mystery surrounding you. I'll take this citadel alone. I will besiege it from all sides. I will not give you a moment's respite. I will watch your every step, and one fine day you will be forced to unlock the gate and hang out the white flag. Because I don't want us to have secrets from each other. Secrets together? Of course. Adon's lips curled into a demonic smile. He accepted the challenge. See you, he said, unclenching his hand. He straightened himself out of the saddle and shook the reins. The capricious stallion began to snore and backed away, crouching on his hind legs. The vampire lightly tickled the obstinate horse with his spurs, and the Ganyok, submitting to the inevitable, defiantly rushed off. Without turning around, Don raised his left hand in a farewell gesture, and the school gates closed behind him. See you later, I whispered, looking at my palm, which didn't have even a tiny scar left on it. See you soon, Leon. I caught up with the troll, which he didn't seem happy about at all. It even seemed to me that he was trying to hide from me behind a tree, but there, for no reason at all, a small lame-legged dog attacked him, attracting my attention with an extremely nasty bark. Are you going far, Val? I asked insinuatingly, watching the troll's unsuccessful attempts to drive away the little dog with waves of his arms, stamping of his feet, and strong words. The dog became more and more furious, jumping up and down like a zealous flea. Kush, you toadstool! The troll pretended to bend over for a stone, and the little dog, with its short tail between its legs, darted into the nearest gateway. Well, let's split the fee, I demanded. Where is the promised decent jeweler? It's a stone's throw from here, the troll reluctantly admitted. I'm just on my way to him. That's great. I'm going with you. The troll became gloomy and looked sadly towards a narrow dark alley. Why do you need this, chick? I would bring some money in the evening. You are the most principled one on AC and I have everything else. No, in half as agreed. Was it in vain that I studied for 8 years? Why should I give my entire first fee to the school? I want a lynx fur coat and obsidian beads. You know, the black ones with a pendant. I saw them in Ragnar's shop. Your women are so greedy and petty, the troll grunted displeasedly. Just now she turned up her nose saying that she doesn't want his filthy money, and now she's thinking about rags and trinkets. I'm a practicing magician, Val. I'm supposed to be practical. Well, let's go, shall we? The little shop, a freshly painted house with a pitched roof and painted frames, was resultantly called the Grybird. The puddles along it were neatly covered with sand. The entrance under the sign was covered with a thick, colorful curtain. 10 steps from the door, Val stopped, making a warning sign. You see, chick, the troll whispered in my ear, looking suspiciously at the sleepy guard patrolling the street entrusted to him. This fellow, the jeweler, is not a very law-abiding citizen. More precisely, he is a buyer of stolen goods. And his shop is constantly crowded with sellers of stolen goods. They know me, and when they see you, they can grab their crossbows. You don't want to get a bolt in each eye, right? So stay here in the shade, and I'll go talk to the jeweler. I stood there for 5 minutes, 10, half an hour. Decently dressed people came and went into the shop. They looked at me warily, mistaking me either for a spy or for a regular bouncer. Time passed, but the troll did not return. When I, suspecting something was wrong, burst into the Grybird, there was no one there. No Val, no criminal elements, no jeweler. The shop sold fabrics. The grey-bearded gnome dwarf leisurely measured a piece of colorful chintz with a yardstick, and in response to my indignant cry, "Where is this fucker?" he nodded lazily towards the emergency exit. It's strange, but along with annoyance and disappointment, I felt genuine relief. This unexpected and, as it seemed to me, undeserved money embarrassed me from the very beginning. The troll ran away, and it seems far away, and for a long time, since he decided to incur with the wrath of the magician. And I'll somehow live without a stone. I have a roof over my head, food in the canteen is free, my boots and jacket haven't completely fallen apart yet. I'll somehow survive for 4 months. Waving my hand on the floating money, I turned around and stomped back to the school. The adepts who came my way were in a hurry to turn away, and if this failed, at least press themselves against the wall, modestly lowering their eyes. My spectacular appearance in the middle of the reach, in the company of a half-naked vampire with bracelets made from scraps of chains, made a noticeable impression on my future colleagues. I walked along the corridor like a gallant knight through a nunnery. Behind the knight, frightened and admiring whispers rustled. The nuns peered through the keyholes of their cells, not daring to approach and speak. "Volha! Where are you hanging?" My friend ran out to meet me, grabbed me by the sleeve, and dragged me into the room. Well, I flew around the city, you know, eat a couple of tramps. I hope no one missed them. Ran my hand over my lips with taste. Stop being a fool. Better tell me what should I do with this thing? What thing? I was very. There, on the windowsill. Belka indignantly pointed her fingers towards the window. Your vampire brought it. He asked to give it to you and not to unfold it under any circumstances. On the windowsill lay a nondescript rag tied in a knot. Did he say anything else? Vilka shook her head negatively. Poorly hiding my annoyance, I untied the rag. Ugh! I involuntarily burst out. What's there? Unable to bear it, Velka whispered cautiously, looking over my shoulder. A diamond, I answered as casually as possible, folding the corners of the rag. Just a diamond, about 10 carats. What a ton of money, Velka said hoarsely. And I left it on the windowsill. I thought it was poisoned. What if someone stole it? Oh my god. Stop screaming. Call the guys. Let's wash my first fee. Leon has always deceived us without lying. Before paying Val with the last diamond, he gave Belka the penultimate one. Did he really foresee the insidious betrayal on the part of the troll? Or did he just want to give me a gift but didn't dare give it to me personally? I hate vampires, I groaned, throwing myself face down on the bed. Vile, trashy, low-lying bloodsuckers. Was it really so difficult to talk to me? Just talk? I wish he choked on his stupid stone. Are you going to return the diamond to him? Velka was alarmed. No way, I muttered indistinctly into the pillow. He shouldn't expect such a nonsense from me. Letter from a courier. Letter by courier. Dear Oksana, I hasten to inform you that the anomaly recorded in the area of the village of Nizhny Kasuty self-destructed without a trace. I am trying to find out the reasons for this incomprehensible phenomenon, but so far without success. Apparently, in the catacombs of the Waldok, there was a gas explosion, that is, methane, which resulted in a gigantic failure at least 100 elbows in depth and 500-600 in diameter. The magic created there dissipated as unexpectedly as it has arisen. The surviving Waldoks leave the disaster site in small groups, avoiding contact with the local population. An important detail is that just before the collapse, I noticed a colossal in-scope release of magical energy, spent by all indications on special teleportation. I wouldn't want to run into a magician capable of such a thing. Tell your student Volharedne that her gift has returned to me after a 2-week absence and settled in the courtyard. She behaves exemplary, performs her service regularly, but just got into the habit of chasing chickens. But oh well. Still, they didn't really get any eggs. By the way, there are rumors that there is a ghost at goat jumping. In the guise of a white horse, which supposedly gallops through the swamp like dry land, fire shoots of its eyes, smoke puffs out of its nostrils in cold weather, and strives to bite or kick the travelers it meets. Superstitious villagers bring her sacrifices of grain and bread, and she is happy. A ghost is a ghost, and she does not shy away from a ghost is a ghost, but she does not shy away from free food. Kuzmai threatened to catch her, but all his hands didn't get. Kuzmai threatened to catch her, but still can't get around to do it. He's either sitting over the books, then the roof of the monastery was leaking, it needs to be repaired, then the rain starts. He's a capable kid, just a bit too careful. Postscriptum. To your request to head the Department of Herbalists and Healers, I once again answer with a categorical refusal. I am not healthy enough to climb hornbeams. For the first time in 74 years, the circle was closed. Rector Ardvist Charnel took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and rose from the stone bed. Out of habit, it felt chilled. The elder respectfully handed him the cloak. After briefly thanking him, Rector threw his cloak over his bare shoulders. He touched the left breast and thoughtfully rubbed a lump of coagulated blood between his fingers. From some time now, the altar aroused slight distaste in the Lord. Leaving the other participants of the ceremony in the cave, he hurried out into the world. The herbalist was waiting for her ruler, sitting on an ivy-covered stone. Did it work? Yes. Oh, praise the gods. Don't you want to directly praise the hero who returned the stone? A doctor joked, sitting down next to her. Kella playfully ruffled his hair. A liberty only she was allowed. No, I don't want to. You're putting your nose up too much already, boy. Better tell me about your adventures. What's there to tell? A doctor automatically ran his hand over his chest, from which the black runes had long been washed away. Lucky, that's all. I came across not just a stupid necromancer, but a complete idiot. And this is where we finish the book, profession which is done, and we will meet again at the second book, The Head Witch, probably after a break. Thank you for listening, and good night.